Even for seasoned RPG players who haven't played Diablo for some time or making a switch from the other game, you will have plenty of questions in some aspects due to the gargantuan total scope of the game. And if you're just about to try it or began play it for the first time, it's almost guaranteed that Diablo 4 will be pretty overwhelming the more you will play it. This video is the most all-covering but at the same time laconic and simple tutorial into the game, which will serve both newcomers as well as RPG veterans. As a new player, you'll find it much easier to feel yourself well oriented in the game, and as a veteran, you will still find some useful tips and tricks for many aspects of the game you probably didn't know about. There is a navigation between every tutorial topic, so you can skip directly to the part you're interested in right now. Also, the guide will be updated with time. This video will serve as the core tutorial, while other, smaller videos and articles on my website will be added as some important mechanics in the game will be changed. Make yourself comfortable and let's take a look. The character creation. Here what you should pay attention to is the hairstyle, eyes and the skin color, because this you're already not able to change after you made the character. Makeup, markings and accessories though, don't bother much, because this you can change anytime for free in the game, at the wardrobe in any regional capital city. Classes, what they do and which one to pick. Class choice is a fully personal choice, but still there is a thing to be known here. For instance, Barbarian class has only melee builds. Sorcerer is a class that needs to stay in range. Rogue, Necromancer and Druid have builds that are both ranged and melee, so if you know you surely prefer the ranged character in general, do not pick Barbarian, and vice versa. If you enjoy tearing enemies apart at close range, the Sorcerer is the last class you want to get for now. The core stats and other stats. The 4 core stats are Strength, Intelligence, Willpower and Dexterity. Here it is done a bit different in Diablo than in most of other RPGs. There are certain bonuses that every stat gives. For instance, Strength increases your armor, Intelligence, magic resistance, Willpower improves healing and overpower damage, more about overpower later, and Dexterity, dodge chance. These ones are always the same for all classes, but core stats also give other bonuses, which change between the class. For instance, for Necromancer, Intelligence improves skill damage, and Dexterity a crit chance. For Rogue though, Intelligence improves crit chance and Dexterity skill damage. It may look pretty weird, but you do not have to memorize all these differences. Just remember they differ between, and if you want to remind yourself how exactly, you can always see that by hovering on them at your character screen. As for all possible other stats that you can have depending on your build, it's done pretty well. You can see all of them below the core stats. Every damage, defense, utility bonus is also segmented per type, and you can see what bonuses are coming from where hovering on them. Note, stats are being showed here only if they are static or are currently active. So let's say if you have some extra movement speed bonus only during certain condition in combat, don't worry if you will not see these bonuses, let's say in a city. Class skills and Paragon system. This may look daunting, but once again, you don't have to become an expert in character buildings instantly, you only need to know the basics. First of all, up to level 50, you are getting a skill point every level, and for some other things as well, about that later. There are active skills and passives. Both are segmented into a skill clusters, going from top to bottom of a skill tree, and every next cluster requires certain amount of skill points to be spent in a skill tree in total. You can get an active skill up to level 5 in the skill tree, but more levels to the skill can be added through the item bonuses. This is called overcap. In this case, the overcapped skill level will be highlighted in blue. You can upgrade active skills twice, but for the second upgrade, you always have to choose one effect from the two. The first two clusters are always offering you to choose your basic and the core skill. Basic skills do lower damage, but they are always free to use. The core skills are your main damage dealers, but they require resource points, mana, energy, essence, etc. differs per class to use them. The last two skill clusters are always Ultimate, the strongest active skill, and the key passive, the ultimate passive skill. You can only have one ultimate and one key passive ability active in your build. The amount of active skills you can use is limited to 6, as shown at your skill bar. The number of 6 is a balance limitation in a view of Blizzard. The 2 skill slots to the right are reserved for the basic and core skills respectively. You cannot put other skills there. This said, technically you can use 2 core skills without a basic skill, but practically such builds are rarely to be effective due to the lack of your resource to properly utilize both. In the 4 other skill slots, you can put any other active skill. Starting from level 50, you are no more getting skill points, but instead getting 4 Paragon points per level. Paragon is a complementary character development system that is separate from your skill tree. The Paragon skills are always passives and segmented into so-called boards. You spend Paragon points to get the nodes and carve your path through the board till you reach the so-called gate node, which allows to attach a new board and keep getting more specific bonuses for your build. There are 4 node types: normal, magic, rare and legendary. Normal nodes always give +5 to certain core stat, and bonuses of magic and rare nodes are more unique. Every rare node requires certain amount of core stats to be purchased through normal nodes. The legendary node doesn't have a requirement in stats, but it's only 1 per board and usually not located any close to the board entrance, so you have to spend some points to get to it. Lastly, but not the least importantly, every board has 1 more unique slot, the glyph slot. Consider the glyph the power core of the Paragon board and the strongest bonus source per board. Glyph always have 2 bonuses, with the second one having requirement of some core stat amount taken in a highlighted radius. This radius grows as you level up your glyph to level 15, which makes it easier to get the requirement or to make the bonus even stronger. The maximum glyph level is 21, and every level usually makes the first bonus stronger. More about leveling up glyphs later. An extra tip: every Paragon board has different number of different core stat nodes. One board may have noticeably more intelligence nodes, and other one strength normal nodes, and so differ the same for the nodes in the glyph radius. Considering this, always look in which board every glyph, depending on its node requirement, will give you the biggest total bonus. Lastly, there is a search filter for your skills and Paragon, where you can quickly toggle some keywords to navigate to the skills you need or to see how you can improve skill synergy, for instance. Do not be afraid of experimenting with your character build in both skill tree and Paragon boards. You can refund the points spent in both anytime, with the price per point getting bigger as your character level grows. The price may look a bit scary, but it's actually not so expensive, as my character is level 100 and you can easily farm dozens millions of gold daily at this point. Every class also has its own unique separate layer of development, a specialization. It's completely different for every class and you can change your choice in it anytime and for free. For every class it becomes available at a bit different level and also requires a short quest to be done to either unlock or complete it. I'm showing Necromancer and Rogue as examples. Necro specialization, the Book of the Dead, is allowing you to not only choose between different type of your undead minions, for instance Shadow, Frost or Bone skeletal mages, but also choose a unique minion ability for every type, which results in many different combinations that can greatly add to your build synergy. Or you can choose to sacrifice your minions to play without them entirely, but get a passive bonuses for yourself in return. The Rogue has one of 3 specializations to choose from. The first one makes your attacks generate combo points to bolster your core skills damage and effects. The second one allows you to gain unlimited energy for a few seconds. And the last one to shorten your ultimate skill cooldown and completely reset your other skills cooldowns. Every of these abilities is powerful in its own way and fits different builds specifically. Evade is your Dark Souls dodge in Diablo, kinda. Evade is a common skill introduced in Diablo 4 that allows you to quickly move to a direction of your cursor and avoid damage. It's a basic skill available for all classes and it's the same just with the different animations. It doesn't cost you resource, but has a charge with a cooldown. Boots items have different evade improvements, like extra charges or attacks reducing its cooldown. Lastly, some classes like Rogue have certain skills and aspects, more about that later, which tie evade to additional mechanics like damage or control procs. Diablo 4 has also 4 difficulty levels, or tiers, that you can change either at your character selection screen or at the edgy boy statue in Curva Shad. The first tier is basically a story mode that will not give you any actual challenge, and personally I would not recommend it even if you are playing RPG for the first time ever. The second tier is a recommended difficulty to play at when you start the game. While enemies are a bit more challenging there, it also gives a bit more gold and XP. Tiers number 3 and 4 are not available to you initially, but are being unlocked after doing so-called capstone dungeons once. Starting from the tier 3, the new event and dungeon mechanics, much better loot drops and new monster types begin to appear. There, game becomes noticeably more difficult, but the XP, gold and loot rewards also become vastly better. In terms of new mechanics, Tier 3 and Tier 4 are the same, but Tier 4 gives the most of the challenge as well as highest XP, gold and most importantly, drop chance of unique items that are the most powerful items in the game and can define your entire build. So if you want to play Diablo 4 to its fullest, Tier 4 is what you should be aiming to play at in the end. Slowed and stunned, chilled and frozen, immobilized, feared, dazed and vulnerable, healthy and injured, unstoppable, close and distant. The game has decent amount of status effects, parameters that can be applied to both you or enemy and affect the combat. The subtype of status effects is a crowd control or just CC. Effects that prevent enemy or you from attacking or moving normally, or sometimes altogether. You don't have to memorize all of them at the same time, and the only main thing you need to always remember is that in Diablo 4 all status effects are strict and independent. What does that mean practically? Let's say while Frozen is the stronger version of Chilled. When you freeze a chilled enemy, only whatever frozen damage bonuses will apply if you have them. Another example is Chill and Slow. While practically enemies are also having their both movement and attack speed reduced while being chilled, which is logical. Technically, game does not treat them as slowed in terms of CC. Slow is slow and chill is chill, and so on. Keep that in mind when choosing between various bonuses and skills and for items. One more important mechanic is Unstoppable. When a player or monster is unstoppable, it ignores all CC effects. If you have any skill that makes you unstoppable, you can also activate it while already being stunned, frozen and so on, to make yourself out of a desperate situation. Elites are the bigger, beefier and stronger version of a normal monsters, which also possess one or more random affixes on top of being so. Affixes here are various passive and active abilities, like the ability to freeze you with attacks, launch extra fire projectiles, generate a barrier that doesn't let ranged attacks out of its radius through, explode on death and many others. The champion monsters have the purple glow and give monsters around of them a damage resistance aura, but at the same time they are not resistant themselves, so always focus on killing them first. Lastly, the champions, players in PvP areas and bosses are all considered elites. It is worth to remember this, because many various skills and item bonuses can give abilities against the elites. Bosses exist in the game world, but almost always as the last enemy in a dungeon. Bosses are strongest enemy type, and they have one special mechanic. They all cannot be affected by any crowd control, slow, freeze, fear, whatever. But you still can make them inoperable. This is a mechanic called Stagger. You can see it as a filling bar right under the boss health bar. When you are applying the CC to the boss, CC effect itself doesn't work, yes, but it fills the the Stagger bar. When it's full, the Stagger bar becomes blue and boss falls down for a few seconds, becoming much more fragile. Because when staggered, boss is considered to be under effect of every crowd control effect in the game. So any bonus damage from whatever source you may have for those will be applied as an extra damage. That's it. There are also world bosses you can meet in the game world. Those are gigantic bosses with special rewards that multiple players can fight at the same time. You also must kill the world boss within the limit of time. And what is also nice, your camera zoom during a world boss fight is much bigger. Extra note, while bosses, and the world bosses of course, cannot be crowd controlled, they are also not unstoppable at the same time. Why it's important to remember? There are some abilities in the game that give you damage bonuses against unstoppable targets, and so this will work on whatever other enemies and elites, but not on the bosses. If you want to do more or take less damage from bosses, look for damage to damage from elites affixes for your build. Campaign, and why do you need to do it? First of all, because unlike in Diablo 3, where entire storyline in both of writing and narration was so cringe it felt written by an edgy teenager, Diablo 4's campaign is actually great as for the RPG storyline standards. It's interesting enough to get involved, the writing is decent and the voice acting is straight up great. But most importantly, going through the campaign eventually will let you open the major part of the map, all region capitals and some other waypoints, as well as receive not only extra XP and gold for exploration itself, but also both extra skill and Paragon points, which all is a part of a so-called Renown system. Renown, simply said, is all about the exploration. Every time you're discovering new waypoints, map area, finish a dungeon, do a side quest and noticeably find the Altar of Lilith, you receive the Renown points you can claim to get extra bonuses. Bonuses are always twofold. First ones give you some extra XP and gold. Second one expands your Obols capacity, more about that later, healing potions capacity, and most crucially, both skill and Paragon points on top of what you're receiving for level ups. This means that when you have reached the maximum renown, read most of the world explored, you will get plus 5 more healing potions capacity, 10 more skill points and 20 extra Paragon points. And now the spice. These renown bonuses are shared between all your characters, so with the renown max just once, you will get all those bonuses already at a freshly created character after the first one. It's also important to find all altars of Lilith as well, because not only every discovered altar gives you a permanent bonus to your core attribute, but some altars also give extra Paragon points and Obols capacity too, and these bonuses are also shared between all your future characters. Lastly, going through the campaign at some point also unlocks a horse mount for this and all your future characters, which greatly speeds up further exploration and the farming outside of the dungeons. The early, mid and end game. These terms are not required to know to play Diablo 4 or any other RPG, but understanding this will make you to know which phase of the game you are at now, what is your progress on general scale, and how and why RPGs are different in terms of the sense of progress. Early game more or less is basically the campaign and the moment till you are able to go to tier 3 yourself, which is usually happening around level 50, maybe a few levels more or less depending on the class and build. During this phase, you're mostly exploring the world, leveling pretty fast and learning the base game mechanics. Mid-game is approximately up to level 70 at the moment you reach tier 4. During this phase, you're leveling a bit more slowly and you most likely will know all the basic game mechanics by this point. Meet many new enemies and bosses that were introduced starting from the tier 3 and the larger scale world exploration outside of the campaign, and start to fiddle more freely with your build and trying harder challenges. The endgame is considered the true gameplay of any RPG. It is the moment when you are reaching the highest difficulty and begin to open brand new level of challenges for yourself through the so-called endgame content. That's usually from around level 70. The highest power items also begin to drop at this point, up to level 100 and further. Why further if I already have reached the max level, you may ask? That's the trick here. When you reach the max level in the RPG, it only marks a beginning of a new final world. The endgame in RPG allows you to meet much tougher challenges in the form of much harder dungeons, super bosses called uber bosses in Diablo, and so on. Also, Diablo, not any RPG, is all about honing your character build to a perfection. And with the huge amount of various combinations your build can end up with through skills, Paragon and items, it takes much more time already after just reaching the max level to do this. And even after that, still trying the pinnacle of the game challenges, which were simply not possible for you to reach before. Item categories and stats. In Diablo 4, items are separated into 5 categories: common, white color, uncommon, blue, rare, yellow, legendary, orange and unique, the bronze color. The difference between them is the amount of item affixes, stat bonuses. Common items do not have any, uncommon 1 or 2, rare 3 or 4, legendary always 4 affixes and a random imprint aspect. Uniques are basically legendaries, with the difference that their affix types and imprint power are always predetermined and may only differ in a power roll. Unique items provide the special abilities, and often just one unique may define your entire build. All items above common also may randomly have or not have a gem socket. And do not be afraid to miss those legendary and unique items when farming. First of all, they are always marked on your minimap when dropped, and even if you forget to pick them up, they will be automatically transferred to your stash as soon as you teleport to the city. Lastly, you may notice that items also have the sacred or ancestral prefixes. Those basically just determine the item total power and so strength of its affixes. Basically, in the endgame, you should be only interested in the ancestral items, as those are of the highest item power grade. Now everything you can craft and do with your items. Upgrades. Here it's simple. By paying some gold and resources, you can upgrade your items up to 5 for most powerful ones times. Upgrading an item improves its armor if it has soul, because jewelry doesn't have an armor, or damage respectively if that's a weapon, and all its affixes strengths. All items minus jewelry can be upgraded at the blacksmith, and jewels at the jeweler. Sockets are the item slots to place gemstones in. Gemstones you can find as loot and craft them to turn lower grade items into higher grade ones. There are multiple types of gems which give different bonuses in different item slots. You can also add sockets to items at the jeweler, and you can also unsocket extract gems from sockets if you need so. It's worth to add here that if you don't need this item itself by now, you can just dismantle it at the blacksmith, and this will also give the gems back. Aspects are special abilities that are making legendary items legendary. Aspects can be unlocked either from clearing the dungeons or randomly at legendary items. Aspects can be extracted from items and then stored in your inventory. Take into account that this destroys the item itself in process. Then you can place the aspect from your inventory at any rare item you want at the enchanter, making this rare item legendary. There are two differences between dungeon and item aspects. First of all, only some aspects are available through dungeons clearing. The complete spectre of those is available only randomly at the legendary items. Secondly, the aspect power roll is strength basically. On the dungeon aspects is always minimal. In other words, aspects from the items is what you should be aiming at for the best result possible. Extra note, you can imprint the same item with a new aspect anytime, but you cannot extract the aspect you placed at the item yourself from it, only place a new one. Also, you cannot extract the aspects from unique items. Now to Enchanter. Aside from imprinting items and extracting aspects, its other important feature is the enchanting itself. It often happens that you can find a nearly perfect item with a good rolls, but let's say one of its affixes is absolutely not fitting your build. That's where Enchanting comes to the rescue. By paying gold and special resources, you can re-roll one of the chosen item affixes to another one randomly in attempt to get your perfect item. Take into account that the gold price for the Enchanting rerolls grows every few rolls, so if you will be doing too many rerolls for the same item, the price can swiftly grow exponentially. Alchemist provides multiple services. First of all, you can upgrade your healing potion strength there once per several levels, making it more potent. Secondly, you can craft elixirs to improve various stats. Elixir lasts 30 minutes and does not go away after death, but take into account that you can only have one elixir active. Also, when leveling, always make sure you have any, even absolutely random elixir active, because all elixirs also give you 5% extra experience gain. Another buff here that you can craft and use is incense. Incenses last 20 minutes and are useful to other players as well, because it affects all players nearby when activated. Incenses are gradated into 3 different tiers of strengths, and you can have one of each tier active, so up to 3 in total. But take into account they are dispelled at death. Also, there are special elixirs in the game which have either much stronger effects in general or just unique effects that are quite situational, like the ones I'm showing now. These elixirs are rare as they cannot be crafted and only found randomly as loot in the game world. Resources are needed for many actions: item upgrades, elixir making, enchanting, etc. You can see all your available resources in the dedicated inventory tab as shown now. Plants, ore, skins and monster parts you find as a loot in the game world, in chests and from the enemies. The salvage parts though you get from salvaging, dismantling the items at the blacksmith. Basically, when it comes to unneeded items, you either sell them in most of cases or salvage them if you need resources. There are several materials that are exclusions here, and you cannot obtain them as a regular loot or salvage. More about those just right in the next video parts. You can also refine all basic resources at the Alchemist, but it's not quite efficient in terms of ratio of resources spent, so turn to this option only if you really need it now. Cellars, events and Obols. Events are short quests that usually appear in a fixed place all around the world, as well as in random places inside the dungeons. There are over a dozen different events in total, each with different conditions: kill as much enemies as possible, protect the NPCs, stay at exact spots while being attacked, and so on. Events also can be both limited in time or not, depending on the conditions. The same mechanic all events share is so-called mastery. If you finish the event as per these mastery conditions, your reward for the completion will be noticeably higher. While events are often a no-brainers to do even for the mastery, it still never hurts to do them smartly to save time and get the maximum benefit. For instance, in the Jar of Souls event, you need to collect enemy souls. Instead of chasing the enemies around, just stay near the jar itself and let the enemies come to you to then sweep all needed souls in a couple of seconds. There is also a special multiplayer Legion event that you are doing together with the other players. It's actually super fun to do, as it involves massacring hundreds of enemies and summoning bosses which you kill together. But the most notable scene for which you may want to do events for is so-called Murmuring Obols, which drop from the event reward chest. You can spend Obols at the Purveyor of Curiosities vendor to get a random tier item of a chosen type, from uncommon to legendary. The exact legendary chance drop is not known for sure, but for me personally it's usually every 4th up to every 3rd item is legendary, which is practically a pretty effective way to farm legendary items with needed affixes and the aspects you can get from them, considering you can farm events pretty fast as they respawn fast and in many places around every world area. You can also buy so-called whispering keys and use them to open unique-looking silent chests for reward inside. But this one is kinda arguable of being worth it, as silent chest drops, at least for now, are pretty mediocre. The Cellars are basically one-room micro-dungeons that usually takes from just a few seconds up to a minute to clear and get a low-grade reward chest. Cellars also may have events spawned inside them as well though. One more thing here to mention specifically is Strongholds. Strongholds are basically as static, larger scale events. A place is corrupted and occupied by demons, but you do them just once per character and they do not give you Obols. What they do give you though, and why you should try to conquer them ASAP, is because as soon you do so, Stronghold becomes cleansed and turns into a normal settlement, with a waypoint, vendors, new side quests and often entrances to the new dungeons. There are 3 Strongholds per every region in Diablo 4 and they are marked with a red skull on your map. Congrats, we have reached the endgame content. First of all, the Helltide, which as for me is the most fun type of Diablo 4 in-game events, period. Helltide is a special region-wide demonic event that only appears at tiers 3 and 4. Aside from legendary items you can loot there, you want to farm Helltide for unique resources such as Forgotten Soul and the Fiend Rose, which you need for the last upgrade level at Blacksmith and Enchanting. Helltide spawns randomly in one of the Sanctuary's 5 regions for 1 hour, and then there is a break for 1 hour and 15 minutes. During Helltide, demonic monsters' density in the region is increased ridiculously, and the enemies themselves are stronger than usual. As you wander the Helltide area, you kill the enemies and collect cinders that they have a chance to drop. Your goal is to collect as many cinders as possible to open the tortured chest for a reward. To do this with the most profit possible, you should prioritize only the mystery chests, which unlike the other chests are not marked on the map until you get really close. The mystery chests provide the best possible reward, up to 5 legendary items, most of the Forgotten Souls and the other good stuff. There are several possible locations of mystery chests per Helltide, and their position may reset on every hour. This means not the hour after the event began, but strictly on the hour of real-time clock. In the perfect conditions and luck, you can open up to 4 mystery chests in all regions but Kyrgyzstan, where you can open up to 6. To farm the most cinders, do not stop by small groups of enemies, and right from event to event, they keep spawning during Helltide normally. Just also drop cinders from the reward chest, and also stop to kill elite packs and, well, really large normal enemy packs. Specifically, the Legion event is the best one as you will get tons of cinders while doing it, so always do it if possible. Another little trick to do is when riding through the Helltide on your horse, always turn on whatever long-lasting AoE skill, if you have such, before mounting. If other players will kill the enemy you rode through before and did even a bit of damage to it, this will still count as skill, and you will be able to pick up cinders on the ground when coming back. What to not do is never leave your last chest opening to the last few seconds of the Helltide, because you never know what can happen. For instance, enemies may spawn and interrupt the chest unlocking animation, just like I showed now. Also, never alt-tab the game for more than just couple seconds, because dying during Helltide wastes half of your cinders. Lastly, thanks to the god of internet, there is a way to make your life easier and farm faster by using the community-driven websites like the helltides.com, for instance, where you can see the location of mystery chests voted by players, which greatly speeds up the search process. I will link this website down below in the video description. The Whispers of the Dead, offered by the Tree of Whispers, is your daily quest mechanic. Whispers offers a variety of short quests in every region that lasts 1.5 hours and then rotates, such as collect the souls from enemies, find and kill a mini-boss, or complete a specific dungeon or cellar. Completing Whispers, depending on its complexity, gives some experience and from 1 to 5 green favors. When you have 10 favors, current Whispers become inactive and grayed out on the map, and you can go back to the tree to get a reward, more XP and a reward cache. From the cache, you can get various items, crafting resources, elixirs and so on. This said, while being improved a bit compared to the game release, it is still arguably worth it to do separately, so it's recommended doing Whispers only as a complementary action when going through the Helltide, doing a certain dungeon or farming events. Also, do not be afraid to get your green favors wasted, aka the points overfill. Let's say you had 9 green favors, and then went into the dungeon. That's also a whisper. Completing this dungeon gives 5 green favors, so when you are done, whispers are grayed out, but as soon as you complete it and get the reward, you will see that the difference over 4 green favors was simply transferred to the next whisper session. The Nightmare Dungeons, or just Nightmares, is the ultimate endgame challenge and farm content at the same time. Simply speaking, Nightmare Dungeon is just the same dungeon between any available in the game, but the harder version of it, with up to 100 levels of difficulty. Starting from the tier 3, so-called Nightmare Sigils can drop to you randomly. A sigil name shows which dungeon you can transform into its nightmare version and also lists the random dungeon affixes, one ability for you and several abilities for enemies. Right-click to activate the sigil and then you can teleport straight to the dungeon itself immediately. You can also press the map key to toggle the list of dungeon affixes anytime when inside. Nightmare dungeons up to level 20 are for the tier 3 world difficulty and from 20 to 100 Tier 4. You can both craft and salvage sigils at the enchanter, and after some time you'll have abundance of the sigil powder to craft as many sigils as you want to get the good ones. Nightmares, especially those of a higher level, are a good source of multiple things at the same time. Experience, while still getting to the character level 100, legendaries farm, and leveling up glyphs to maximize your Paragon powers. Every time you finish the nightmare, you get some glyph experience, which you can use at the appearing Awakened Glyph Stone to level up your glyphs, which is important as the glyph level 15 increases its radius and then keeps improving its power up to level 21. The harder nightmare dungeons give more glyph experience. The efficient farming of nightmares is about your time spent and what you get for that, which comes down to this: good dungeon and good affixes. What determines a dungeon being good or bad? Basically two things: the amount of objective backtracking and the density of monsters and elites. The good dungeons are those that have simple objectives and a straightforward dungeon layout that does not require you running back and forth all the time, and has a good density of enemies so you can get the most experience and loot in minimal time. Examples of a good dungeons: Blind Burrows, Alder's Cave, Malwood, Nostrava Deepwood, Cultist Refuge, Hoarfrost Demise. And the bad ones is something like Shifter Ruins, for instance, that has a huge layout and such placements of objectives that you sometimes may need to go through an entire already empty dungeon 2 extra times to finish it. As for the affixes, aside from just a few exclusions, there are no universally good and bad ones, because this varies for different builds. For instance, the Suppressor affix is a scourge of range classes, because coming close to the elite enemy to be able to attack it is the last thing the range class want to do, while for the melee builds, this affix will make literally no difference. Thus, always look on the affixes and simply ask yourself, will those noticeably slow me down? If no, then that's a good sigil. Do not pick the melee defender's affix for your barbarian or a cold resistance affix for your frost mage. That's clearly a bad idea, you know. Also, I personally always try to avoid all kind of environmental affixes, like the lightning storm, drifting shade, death pulse, and so on, because those will always slow you down no matter the class. How to level up fast. Main thing to remember here, it's all about dungeons. While the exploration and side quests may be interesting to do, they will never provide the same amount of XP as the good dungeon grind. And there, more or less, it is similar to the criteria of a good nightmare dungeons. For instance, at the moment of this video creation, there is one certain dungeon that no other can rival, the Alder's Cave. Simple objectives, nearly to no backtracking, and absolutely incredible enemies density. It is so good that even on level 80 and higher, you can still farm the normal version of it without making it harder as a nightmare version for more XP. You can do it so fast and get so much XP in process that even the normal version is incredible for level up. But as with everything else in the game, this exact dungeon may be nerfed at some point, so simply follow the mentioned criteria yourself anytime. That's for the solo leveling. For your alt characters, if you have a mate of a much higher level to help you, ask them to grab you and to take you into nightmare dungeons of their level and simply stay at the dungeon's entrance. You'll still get the experience no matter the distance, and then you can just pick up the loot when the dungeon is cleared and level up your glyph is needed. Also, there is a little tip for teleporting. Generally, if a party is way above your level, it is quite dangerous to teleport on them in the middle of a fight, as you can easily get one-shotted by the strong enemies. But if you will not move after you just teleported, enemy AI will not consider you present, so you can just teleport to your mates and stand still until the danger has passed. How to choose your build. First of all, if you are a complete newcomer to the Diablo series or even RPG in general, make your first build blindly. Even if you will make mistakes, ending up with not a so much strong build, this will still be your mistakes that will make you learn and realize something more interesting. Secondly, if you are not sure about what exact mechanic to build your character around, do not make your life harder than it could be. What does that mean? Let's take a rogue as an example. You can go around several crowd control methods, but which one? Let's take the chill. Apply the filter and you can see there are 5 skills that are related for the entire skill tree. At the same time, Dazed CC has 7 skills related to it, so it's already hinting you that it will be easier to build rogue around Dazed than around chill. Of course, this is not an absolute rule, and for inexperienced players, incredibly powerful builds can come out of an absolutely unexpected combinations. But as for the beginning, the general rule of thumb is not to try to invent a bicycle if you can ride it already. But all in all, if you are still not sure what to pick eventually, I will soon release a powerful character build videos after this one, and you can hop into our Discord to get a real-time support from me and other players anytime. With so many items, aspects, elixirs and tons of other stuff, especially when you will have more than just one character, your personal inventory space will be clearly not enough. For this, in any major city, you can store items for the future in your stash, a large chest with several extra inventory tabs that you can unlock by paying some gold. The contents of the stash is shared between all your characters, so you can take whatever you need, buy any of them anytime. Challenges are the in-game achievements for countless actions you can do and dangers to overcome. Earn some amount of gold, kill huge amount of enemies of a certain type, defeat the Uber boss, conquer the highest tier nightmares and so on, from combat related to exploration and the social ones. Challenges do not give you any gameplay bonuses, but every challenge expands the amount of titles you can get for your character, which is probably not something everyone would care about, but still a nice little bonus. While it's not obligatory, you can go through nearly every gameplay part of Diablo 4 in up to 4 people party with your friends. It is also a subjective moment, but for some people, clearing dungeons in party is much more fun. But take into account that for every member in the group, monsters will have plus 100% extra health, up to 4 times more health in a full party. Also, to form a party, all players must be present at the same world tier level, and the state of the world is determined by the party leader's progress. The clans in Diablo 4 are at the same time similar and not to what clans are in the MMORPGs. They are similar because it's the group of players that most likely share the same in-game priorities, but also different because unlike in most of MMOs, clans here do not give you any actual gameplay benefits at all and are purely social, which still can be a good thing for many players. You can either join one of many existing clans or make a new one and become a big boss yourself. Seasons are the decades-old companion of the Diablo series since the second game, though they have its current shape since Diablo 3. A season is basically a standalone copy of the game world, but with own thematic content. It can be the new questline, new bosses and dungeon challenges, and of course, new items and powers. The only main condition to play the season is, as it is standalone, you cannot play it with your existing character from the so-called Eternal Realm, and must create a brand new character to level it up from the beginning. Yet after the season ends, your seasonal character is rolled back back to the Eternal Realm, but once again, for a next new season, you still have to make a new character. Seasons usually last from 3 to 4 months. You are not obliged to play seasons. For instance, I don't care about them at all personally, but many players also find it highly entertaining, so it's also a completely personal choice. Wow, that was something. If you are still here, I thank you for being such a good listener and hope you got some useful information about Diablo for today. As the time will go, I will surely release updates for this tutorial when needed, in a form of a new shorter videos and on my website. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button for more RPG content, and join our Discord to always stay in touch and receive advice in real time. Thanks for watching, fellas, and see you soon. Stay tuned, stay safe, and stay happy. Sinitar here, signing out.